Ladies and gentlemen, since we are about to begin services, I ask that you take a moment to silence your cell phone. Today's service for Norbert Gehr will be officiated by Rabbi Robert Elias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. I would like to begin with two Hebrew words to welcome you, and they are Bruchim Habaim, which very loosely translated would mean, may God bless you for being here today to do something very meaningful, very special. If I were permitted only one word to describe your presence here today, I think most appropriately that word would be holiness. Because truly, when wonderful people like you gather together at the end of a life, we hope to accomplish two things. First and foremost, with dignity, with honor, with respect, with some traditions, and with an outpouring of love that you bring with you. We gather together to say to the citizen of the earth, that part of a human being that we believe is created from the earth, and in one form or another, a little sooner or a little later, but inevitably always must remain behind on the earth. And when that fateful day comes, as it does for every person, wonderful people like you gather together to be able to say to that citizen of the earth, rest in peace. It's a very noble and loving thing to do. If that were the only reason to be here today, certainly that would be good enough. But we believe, and when I say we, I mean every great religion in the world believes, all people of faith believe, that there's something inside a human being beyond the tangible physical material. We believe there is something inside of us not of this world. And that little piece inside of us has many names. Some people refer to it as a spirit, a spark. In Hebrew, we call it a neshama, which I guess you would translate as a soul. And if you were to ask me, what is a soul? I think in today's vernacular, I would say it's God's DNA. Whatever it is God is, we believe a little piece of that is given as a gift to every human being. So you are therefore a little bit of earth and a little bit of heaven blended together. It's a magnificent combination. And when the part that comes from the earth wears out, as always it does, because we are, after all, very fragile beings, as magnificent as a human body is, and as millions of things going right all the time in your body, we are very, very temporary. You know, when you think of the human body, I tell people that as a rabbi, I can believe in God simply by looking at a human being and seeing how amazingly complex you are. That I don't believe any amount of evolutionary time could create something as magnificent as a human being. And the human body is never off. You know, when you're driving your car, you turn it off, it's off. Human body is never off. Even when you're sleeping, when you're resting, your heart is beating, your mind is working, you're breathing, everything is still working. It's an amazing creation. The human eye, there's no camera that can do what your eye does. I only say this to you as preamble to try and impress upon you how much infinitely greater we believe the soul is. And because of its definition of what the soul is, it doesn't get sick. It doesn't get old, cannot die, doesn't live here, but was just sent down for a little blink we call life on earth. And when that time is up, that little piece inside of us, as the body is laid to rest to go home to the source from where it came, that little spark also yearns to go home to the source from where it came. So what we're doing here today, my dear friends, is we've gathered together to escort a great soul on his journey home. And I can't think of a greater definition of holiness than that. And truly, when we talk about escorting a great soul home, that is really exactly the meaning of the words today. When we gather together to the midst of sorrow, through tears, through pain, to celebrate nonetheless a great life. And we want to overwhelm our sense of loss with a sense of gratitude. And so we gather today not to litigate with God, not to complain, not to ask questions for which there are no good answers. We gather together instead to celebrate the amazing accomplishments and to be able to be amazed at what a great difference one human being can make in the world. One person. What a source of tremendous accomplishment. It's amazing, magical, inspirational. And before any words have been spoken today, the greatest tribute for Norbert has already been paid. When I look out and I see so many people here today, so many people drawn here for the love of the man, for the friendship that you had with the man, for the working relationship, the family, the friends. It's really, you have spoken already volumes. And it is heartwarming to see such an expression in such large numbers of love. And so it's very easy for us at this moment to be able to imagine. I could certainly imagine as Norbert's soul goes home to God, the Master of the universe will welcome him home. I think God will hug him and say to him, my dear, sweet, wonderful son, welcome home. I'm proud of you. You were sent down during the most turbulent times, arguably, in entire human history. You were sent into a world that self-destructed. You were sent into a place where people hated each other for no reason, where you lost family simply because they were Jewish. No crime, nothing terrible that they did. And you came out of that furnace, that inferno, to be able to build a life that encompassed thousands of people. And made the world, through your efforts, a nicer, more beautiful, sweeter, kinder place. That's his contribution. That's his legacy. And everybody here who had the honor and the pleasure, the privilege of knowing him for whatever length of time is touched by that and changed forever by it. And that's what we celebrate today. Yes, there are tears, there is pain, there is loss, but even more importantly, there is joy. And I think as God opens his arms, and do you know, if you've grown up and you hear your mom or dad say to you, let's say you're 40, 50 years old, and your dad calls you in and goes, you know what, you turned out pretty good, I'm proud of you. It feels good. When your parents say it feels good no matter how old you are, that you did good. Imagine when the Master of the universe will say to Norbert, you did good, I'm proud of you. How great that feels. And then when he opens his arms, they're waiting for him. Will be the people who loved him the most, who preceded him. And he will have a tremendous welcome in heaven. I wanted to tell you a little story to illustrate that for you. About 10 years ago in my own congregation, I had a man come to me speaking Yiddish. And he said, Rebbe, he says, I always forget, I have to tell it in English so people will understand the story. I'll translate it for you. He came to me and he said, Rabbi, I want to ask you a question. Is it true that you cannot take it with you? I said, I'm sorry, it's true. He goes, hey, it's not fair, it's terrible. I worked very hard my whole life, thanks God, I did well. Now I have to leave it behind, it's terrible. So I said to him, look, what's the job of a rabbi or a priest? If people are in trouble, you want to comfort them. So I said to him, look, even though you cannot take it with you, you could send it ahead. He goes, aha, now you're talking, how you do this? So I said to him, it's very simple. We believe and we teach. Every human being has a savings account in heaven. You have a bank book. And your whole life, you're sending deposits into your account. Every time you do a mitzvah, something nice, You pick up the phone and you say, I heard you weren't feeling well. I hope God sends you a speedy recovery. You did a good deed. You cheered someone up. You sent it into your heavenly account. You say to somebody, don't give up. Things might be tough for you now, but the wheel of life turns and you will succeed. Hang in there. You've given the gift of hope. It's a tremendous gift. You can't live without hope. As a matter of fact, the Israeli national anthem is called Hatikva, the hope. And you've sent it into your heavenly account. Every dollar you give away to somebody, to help someone, to feed someone, is yours to keep forever, waiting for you in your heavenly account. And sometimes I truly believe the only things we actually keep in life are all of those things we give away. And so as Norbert goes home, to his heavenly home, to the world of reward, did you ever notice the way we speak English? When we don't want to say he died, some people don't like to use that expression. It seems harsh. We have euphemisms. We'll say instead, well, he passed away. It's gentler. Or my favorite, he's gone to his reward. So even the way we talk means there's some kind of a reward. One door closes, the door to life on earth, another door opens to life of reward. You can be happy today, and you can celebrate today. Because here's a man who sent a lot ahead. He did pretty good here too. But imagine all the nice things he did in his life. He sent so much ahead that he's going to be even wealthier in heaven than he was on earth. And that for us, my dear friends, is very comforting. I had a chance to view a video, and I think everybody will have that opportunity today. Last April, before he was scheduled to undergo a bone marrow transplant, Norbert Gehr agreed to be interviewed on video for a documentary that would serve as his legacy message to his children. At that time, Norbert was aware that the odds of success for his treatment were not high. But he maintained his usual persistent optimism. You'll see in the video, he talks about himself as an eternal optimist. Quite an amazing person. A few weeks ago, the project was completed. The result is a powerful 50-minute documentary that conveys Norbert's legacy and his views about life and family. It was therefore decided that all eulogies will be given at the reception following the funeral, and instead we will view the documentary of Norbert's legacy as part of the memorial service. And now, the video.
I have this burning flame inside of me. That's what moves me.
Germany, Brazil, and the United States are the countries that help shape the extraordinary life story of Norbert Gehr. To know him is to learn how history and fate shaped his destiny.
I am a risk taker, like to be challenged, and I like to overcome those challenges. That's what makes me who I am.
Son, brother, entrepreneur, father, leader, innovator, philanthropist, supporter, and friend. These are just some of the defining roles that describe Norbert. Norbert Gehr. What an amazing life story. But let's go on the journey together with him in his words. Norbert, let's start back with your parents.
When my father returned to Germany after World War I, he discovered that the region in which he was born had been annexed to Poland, and therefore the whole family moved into the new borders of Germany to Berlin, where they established themselves and became rather successful with a small department store. And all 6 brothers and my grandmother worked in the family business. But as the Nazi regime took hold, it became more and more difficult to live in Germany, and they got to the point where my father decided that it was not worth it to stay there. Friends would walk past him and turn their heads as if they didn't know him, and some of them would even turn their heads and spit on the sidewalk in spite. So he decided that was not a lifestyle that he wanted to continue to have. Berlin was the capital of Europe in those days, culturally, and with respect to every aspect of life, including the best concerts and the best entertainment and nightlife. So when he decided to leave Germany and go to Brazil, from all places, his brothers were just amazed that he was making that decision. But they thought that this was passing in nature and did not want to relocate at all. The youngest of the 6 brothers, my Uncle Herbert, decided that he would do likewise. My dad was the oldest, and my Uncle Herbert was the youngest. However, if you were Jewish in 1933, when Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany, he already could not take too many Deutschmarks out of Germany. So that when they got to Rotterdam in Holland, a port city in Holland, to get on a ship to Genoa in Italy, and then finally board a ship in Genoa, which would have gone down to Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, they discovered that they did not have enough money to pay for 2 tickets. So my uncle very unselfishly gave my dad his few German marks, and he went back into Nazi Germany. And I always admired him for being so unselfish and so giving. I knew about it, and I grew to respect and admire my Uncle Herbert very much. As late as 1938, he was still in Germany, trying to get an exit visa, which was no longer being given. And that's another aspect of my Uncle Herbert that I learned to admire, which was persistency.
His uncle discovered that Shanghai was the only country in the world at the time accepting Jewish refugees. He would eventually make his own way down to Brazil with the help of his brother. Norbert would be born in Brazil, and it didn't take long for the young Norbert's entrepreneurial genes to surface.
But as a young man, I was rather unconsoled with the idea that Brazil, a country of continental dimensions, did not have a drop of oil. And it imported like 97 or 98% of their oil needs. And I wanted to become a part of the effort to find out where this oil was hiding in Brazil.
How old were you at that time?
I was 17.
So you were pretty young, and you were already thinking as an entrepreneur.
Well, I just liked the challenge, so I decided that I would have geology as a major in college. But unfortunately, most universities in Brazil at the time did not have a geology major. The few geologists in Brazil and petroleum engineers had gone to school in the United States. I decided that I would do likewise. But my father was not doing very well in his business and could not afford to support me in the U.S. going to school. So again, my Uncle Herbert, because of his distrust of banks, he actually had cash under his mattress that he kept just in case he had to run away one more time. I told him about my idea of going to the United States to study geology, and he reached under his mattress and pulled $800 and gave it to me.
Once again, Uncle Herbert became the hero. But $800 was not enough to launch Norbert into the United States. And what would become a lifelong pattern of challenges and solutions, Norbert found one.
I had a number of friends in high school who were politically very strong because their families were very politically connected. As a result, they introduced me to the governor of the state in those days. And he asked the president of the Brazilian Lloyd, which was a shipping company, which had a fleet of freighters, which called on ports in the United States to make available a passage for me in one of those ships.
When the port authorities inquired about his destination, they were surprised when he said New York, since his goal was to receive an education in California. But Norbert, always a step ahead, knew between working full-time to support himself and going to school, he would not get to see the United States for a long time. So he decided to start his journey to California in New York.
I walked off that ship and saw a taxi cab. The driver asked me, "Where to, Mac?" A lot of American movies flashed through my mind that I had watched as a kid. And a couple of them were about Times Square. So I thought I would venture to say Times Square Hotel, not knowing that such a place even existed. And to my own amazement, he drove to 43rd Street in Manhattan, and there it was, the Times Square Hotel, which was up to that moment a figment of my imagination. And it was a beautiful hotel.
What was your impression as a young man coming to this country from Brazil?
It was very impressive, especially in New York City. So I couldn't wait until I ran up to my room and dropped my little suitcase and came rushing back downstairs, and it was very late. It was like around midnight. And I was just amazed that all the stores were open and the street was so well lit and families were walking up and down. One thing that I noticed on the way up was the fact that I went past the New York Times building, and they had all of these trucks being loaded up with bundles of newspapers to be distributed to newsstands around Manhattan. And that stayed in my memory for many years, and later on helped me to find the Times Square Hotel building decades later, when I was building my own hotel in Manhattan.
What a contrast, though. Look at that. This young man comes from Brazil, goes to New York, Times Square, and then what year did you build your hotel there?
2009. So a long time afterwards.
But what does that make you feel like inside?
Well, it made me feel like I went full circle.
And that's kind of where it all began for you, really.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
After a couple of days of seeing the impressive sights in New York City, he remembered a friend from high school who was living in Washington, D.C. He discovered his friend had already bought an airline ticket to return to Brazil, but instead, his friend cashed his ticket, bought a car, and the two young men headed out to California together. It didn't take long, though, to understand why the car was such a good buy. The two travelers didn't get but 50 to 100 miles on the Pennsylvania Turnpike when their troubles began.
There was this loud whistling noise coming from under the hood. So I told him, I said, we need to stop and find out what's going on. So we did, and we almost burnt our fingers by trying to open the cap of the radiator because it was boiling. And once we managed to open it, it was like a geyser of steam, you know, and hot water. So finally we've stopped at a gas station where there was an honest mechanic who told us, boys, you've got a serious problem here. He says, you have a cracked engine block.
That's really serious.
I said, wow, what does that mean? How much does it cost to fix it? He said, $800. $800, that's all the money I have. But then I looked out and saw that they had a number of leather bags hanging from the hooks. So I told Mario, says, you know, that may be an answer for us. If we buy, that's very inexpensive, if we buy half a dozen of those leather bags and fill them with water, hook them onto the front bumper, and that's how we made it all the way out to California.
That's a great story.
Every time I started to whistle and the steam come out from under the hood, we'd stop and pour some water into the radiator.
Time for a drink.
Yeah, exactly.
So then you got to California.
Right.
And where did you go to school here?
First, I went to a junior college in Orange County to improve my English. And then eventually I went to UCLA. But while all of this was happening, I had different jobs that were kind of menial jobs, and until I got a job in the quality control department of a food company, Standard Brands.
It was during this period, however, when Norbert learned there wasn't a big demand for geologists. He discovered that some people with degrees in geology had taken to menial jobs, including carpentry and driving taxis.
And so I was just shocked by it because there's really not much of an opportunity for a geologist.
So what did that do to your ambition?
Well, first of all, I had decided not to go back to Brazil because the Brazilian government started to nationalize the little that there was in the oil industry in Brazil. And I had a much more entrepreneurial view of what I wanted to do in oil than to become a civil servant. I then decided just to quit college and go to work. Ended up with 3 jobs at the same time. I worked from 9 to 5 at this import company in Hollywood. I then drove back to City of Commerce to start my work in that quality control laboratory between 6 and 12 midnight, swing shift. And for good measure, over the weekends, I worked as a cashier for the old Frank Taylor Ford dealership downtown LA.
Where did you get that kind of drive and ambition?
That's just my nature. I always had this burning flame and wanting to be successful. After a while, I decided there had to be a better way to go about getting ahead. So I would get a pocket full of dimes, and I used to go up to this phone booth in La Brea and start with AAA, AA, B, AC, AD, etc., going down the line and offering my services. What I told them was that basically that I believed that I could become an asset to their business. So I got turned down, 99.9% of the time, until I got to ALL, Allied Wholesale, and this fellow, Ronnie Newberg, answered the phone. My name is Norbert Gehr, and I'm calling you because I really believe that I can be an asset to your company. So he says, kid, because you had the guts to call me and cold turkey like this, I'll agree to see if you can get down here within the next hour. So I did go down there. He said, before anything else, because if we discuss anything further, I'd like you to go back to my warehouse and look around and then tell me what you think. So I did that, and I felt that this was really like a university in the best sense of the word, because he had all kinds of general merchandise ranging from jewelry to hand tools to kitchen appliances to you name it. I went back to the front office and said, yeah, I'm really interested. And he said, okay. So I'm going to offer you a job for $400 a month. I said, I'm sorry, Says, I'm making $600 a month already. I'm trying to get ahead, not go backwards. So his reply was very short. Either you accept my offer or just take a walk. I thought that over the long run, I'd be better off taking that offer, although it meant less money. And I rose through the ranks and became the general manager of the company. Eventually, they went to the middle of the business and had over 100 employees, and I was running the business, basically. I was making $25,000 a year, driving a Cadillac convertible. You know, for a kid that was
That's pretty impressive.
22, 23 years old, that was not bad. But I could not grow beyond that point unless I bought the business, and that was not in the cards.
So what would become a pivotal turning point in Norbert's life? He decided to launch his own company. Discovering a vacant storefront on Ventura Boulevard in Studio City, he began what would become one of his strong suits in business to negotiate for the lease.
He was asking like $200 a month rent. I had to convince him that if he had 8 months to go on his lease, if he made it available to me for $100, which is all that I could afford, he would be losing only half of what he would lose otherwise. And he ended up agreeing with me, and so I rented that space. I was focusing on expendable products, in, construction and industrial, like cutting tools, hoses, industrial hoses, construction hoses, pressure-sensitive tapes, and products like that.
He realized that navigating the LA freeway systems was not productive. So with his usual determination and optimism, he made a phone call to the old Statler Hilton. And to his amazement, he made his very first telephone sale. That
was the beginning of telemarketing. I was probably the first one to create telemarketing regarding tangible products. Created a rather explosive growth because over the phone we could go nationwide.
So did you learn when you were with Allied where to buy these things? Is that you? So you had
oh, absolutely, yeah. And so all I had to start was $2,000, which was the result of my selling my Cadillac convertible. But I had enough credibility with some of the companies that I dealt with when I was at Allied Wholesale, so that they were willing to give me products on consignment.
Where did this really strong ambition and drive come from?
I'm a believer that immigrants take a lot less for granted than everyone else. So that's one aspect that I think is important in terms of explaining the drive.
Your family, they were in business first before they moved out of Germany, so they were entrepreneurs.
Yes.
You were sort of almost had that work ethic inborn in you.
Absolutely. Because everyone wants to be successful, but not everyone is willing to pay the price.
And the price is?
The price is sacrificing your social life, working 10 to 12 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. And when you're starting from scratch, that's what it takes.
And I have a feeling you have no regrets about that.
No, none whatsoever.
But you were able to, some people seize opportunities. You were able to create opportunities.
Yes. I believe that to some extent that is true.
A self-made man means what to you?
It means starting from nothing, not inheriting anything, not being given anything by anyone, and having to build everything from scratch. This was the foundation of the businesses that I created over time. So I decided that after a while I had to become basic in manufacturing. But I had zero experience in that field. In the process of contacting copper wire producers back east, I started to visit them and learn a lot about that part of the business, and at the end I decided to be much more vertical than I had intended. After a while, I learned some of the tricks of the trade, how to solve problems, and it became a very successful pursuit. At that time, the sales and marketing business was very sizable. That's what was generating such a huge demand for product that would justify getting into manufacturing. And because I started to acquire all the buildings that were required for the existing operations at the time, I then became very interested in real estate. In 1984, acquired substantial properties in that field in Sacramento, Long Beach, and Downey, and got very involved with multifamily residential properties. And eventually expanded into shopping centers and office buildings in Florida, and eventually into hotels in New York City. The defense business came about by my wanting to have sort of a return to the roots at a period in a given time period. And I went back to Brazil and bought a house in Rio, and this most beautiful location with the greatest views and such. But after lying by the pool for a few days, I concluded that I could not continue to do that, and decided to start a company there as well.
Through his vision, ambition, determination, combined with that burning flame, Gehr Industries was launched.
The group of companies is made up of three main business units. Gehr Industries, which is our original business in the electrical field, electrical products. Gehr Development, which is the real estate arm, which owns and operates multifamily residential properties in California, industrial spaces in California, and currently hotels in Manhattan. And the Gehr International, which operates only in Brazil, and it's a defense and security organization associated with some of the leading defense companies in the United States, Europe, and Israel. From missiles to communication systems to battle tanks, military electronics, intelligence systems, and all the rest. We're basically a sales and marketing organization there, and after-sales service. And we did that in association with some of the main defense companies in the world, like General Dynamics from the United States, the Boeing Company, KMW from Germany, Israel Military Industries, Israel Aircraft Industries, Astronautics Corporation of America. You know, in fact, there's very little in common between the business units. They just came about via my becoming interested in those particular fields. I just enjoy the challenge of creating a business from scratch.
Well, you really smile when you say that, by the way.
Yeah.
You enjoy that, don't you?
Because I do enjoy it, absolutely, yeah.
And you like hard work.
And I think that's really a very important key to being successful, is that you need to really like what you do if you're going to be excellent. If you're just going to be good or very good, you don't have to love what you do. But if you want to be excellent, you have to really love what you do. And I happen to love everything I do. Although I'm very fortunate, as I said earlier, to have a very great number of very capable, competent executives who help to run these companies. But I continue to be very much involved in every aspect of all of the companies.
We had the opportunity to continue our conversation with Norbert at Gehr Industries in California.
This was one of the most meaningful presents that I ever got, and I got it right at the time that I started my first company, first business. And it sort of tells the story, sums up the trajectory that I have traveled since then. Always pushing the rock, which means always facing up to challenges and overcoming those challenges. They forgot to tell me that 48 years later, I've still been pushing the rock. But being that I can't remember who it was, I don't know who to call to file my complaint. I don't mind still pushing the rock today, meaning that I still enjoy my work. And the taking on new challenges is always a good thing.
While we were there, we had the opportunity to meet some of his longtime executives, and it was interesting. Each one of them had a special business relationship with Norbert before joining him full-time. Galen Ho has been with Norbert almost from the beginning. They started out together at Allied Wholesale.
Norbert was just a young man himself, starting out with a vision and a dream. And I was a young man just starting out needing a summer job. 49 years have passed, and I'm now in my 50th year, and I haven't left yet.
David Lifshitz began his business relationship with Norbert when he was at Anderson.
It was a division of Anderson that was more of a consulting unit. We did do audits for clients, but we also advised entrepreneurial companies, small companies, medium-sized companies, and some of them are large but privately owned. The common theme was that there was an entrepreneur, a strong entrepreneur usually. It took him about 6 months of courtship. But you can't say no to Norbert.
Mark Goldman served as Norbert's personal counsel for 30 years before he came on board full-time.
Most of the people that are here just started out with Norbert in a different capacity and just wanted to be here. And so that, I don't think it's an accident. He's one of those people, I'm quite sure that if you took away all his assets and put him in a brand new setting, in a few years he'd have assets again. You know what I mean? And that it's not an accident. It's not by inherited wealth. It's just that he knows what he's doing.
Alfred Somek's introduction to Norbert came when he was working at a property management company, and that's when he started to manage some of Norbert's properties. And now he manages his real estate holdings, including his hotels in New York. So tell me a little bit about the hotel, because he landed in Times Square as a young man when he first came to the United States, and now he has hotels there. So that's a pretty interesting full circle.
It is interesting, and actually it's interesting. The one night, Norbert and I decided in New York, we were looking at different sites, and there was one site we were looking at in particular that we went over to, and Norbert said, I want to see the first hotel I've stayed at. So we went searching all over the Times Square area, and we actually found it. There was a big plaque. It was called the Times Square Hotel. And you should have seen him. He was beaming when he took a look at that sign and said, I can't believe this is here.
Each of these executives have solid reasons for their longevity and their special relationship with Norbert.
Works with us to lead us in the sense that he gets in the trenches with all of us, puts in long hours, sets the example of good work ethics, and is a good teacher, self-driven man to be successful for himself and for his family. At the same token, he is very loyal to employees, who have given them all their lives. And he's also very concerned about their welfare and will reciprocate anytime that he can if he can help them out.
Just a great man, and you feel that way about him, and so it's easy to be loyal. And he's also sort of like a father figure, too, where he just takes care of people. He loves business, and it's a challenge. Over a period of many years, I've said to him, why are you doing this? Or why are you even taking risks? Why are you going to go buy another hotel? Or why are you going to do this? But because I think his answer, and I'm probably paraphrasing, but his answer was, because that's who I am. So it's in his genetics, really, that this is what he does, this is what he enjoys, this is what he loves, and he just wouldn't be the same person.
He's one of the few people that dreams about things and makes it happen. He's a champion of everything, anything that he wants, and he's so focused, and he's a mentor. He teaches. He is loyal to us. He thinks about us. He thinks about our families. He cares about our families, and that's from the heart.
One word to describe Norbert.
One word? Driven.
Tenacious is one of the key words that comes to mind. I've seen him in situations where many other people would have given up, and he keeps going. Whether it's in business, whether it's negotiation for anything, whether it's personal asset, or whether it's negotiating for someone to come and work for him.
The word that I keep thinking of is respect.
It is. That's exactly it. In fact, that's really probably, I could have simplified everything I said by using that word, but the people who work for him really respect him. we don't think that we know more than he does. We just, in fact, we learn by him, and he just has a wonderful skill set.
I have a tremendous respect for him and admiration. When you look at his life story and what he's accomplished.
What's it like to work with Norbert? Year in, year out, decade in, decade out.
You can't do it without liking who you work for.
I learn from him every day.
And that's what I like about Norbert.
One of the things that have surprised me the most is the level of loyalty and long-term allegiance that I've been able to develop in people around me. At times I have stopped to think about how come this has developed the way it has. It's, I understand the basic fundamentals that may bring that about, but still, at times I'm in awe of the fact that at the end of the year, I look at the list of people to be recognized for longevity with the companies that make up our group, and I'm sometimes really surprised, both surprised and amazed at the number of people that have been with one of our companies for 25 years, or 30 or 35 or 40 or 45 years. So in answer to your question, if anything has ever surprised me to a certain level, that would be it. Yeah. That bond and that level of loyalty has seemed to me to be rather amazing at times. And I believe that this company has a heart, has always had a heart, and has dealt with everyone in that manner.
There must have been times along the way that you might have been discouraged and thought about quitting. Did you ever have those thoughts?
When things were not going as well as I anticipated, it just meant that I needed to work harder and do more and figure out how to solve problems in a better manner.
Do you ever have fear at all, or that homesickness, or any doubt?
Well, of course, I experienced some questioning of what I was doing at certain points in time, but I never turned back. I always moved forward. I had made a decision, and I decided to stick by it. Yeah, so.
Conviction.
Yes, well, yeah. In the very beginning, there were times where I would cry on my pillow at night, really, because I missed my family and my parents and my brothers. And but that was not a reason for me to decide to go back on what I had decided to do. So I knew that I had to stick it out, and I did.
Norbert's passion for his businesses, his work, and his employees is clear. But let's talk about perhaps his most important passion and role, and that's father to his 4 children. Now, what message would you have for your children? From your daughter to your young sons, what messages would you have for them about life, about career choices?
They need to find a field of endeavor that they can be in love with, so they can be very successful in pursuing their different choices. And to me, it really doesn't matter what those choices will be, so long as it is something that they really believe in and something that they will love doing. What I hope the most for my children is that they should acquire a deep understanding of the importance of tolerance. So whatever they believe in, they expect to be respected, and likewise, they need to respect what everyone else believes in terms of religion, politics, and sports even.
When your children look back as they get to be, now they're teenagers and you have your daughter in her 20s, but 20 years from now, what do you think they'll look back on their dad, and what do you think their thoughts will be?
I don't know. I hope that they will develop positive thoughts about their dad. All that I know is that I've done my best on their behalf by providing them with the best education available and the best orientation in their lives. And hopefully they will realize over time that that was all to their benefit.
Now, you just took your family on a big trip to Israel and Greece.
It was an opportunity for me to spend time with the children. I felt it was important for me to do something memorable in nature. One of the highlights of the trip, in my view, was our visit to Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. And I think it was important for them to understand better the background of our family, at least on my father's side, and hopefully generate more appreciation and admiration on their part about the wisdom that their grandfather demonstrated by leaving Germany as early as he did, which, as I explained to them, would otherwise not have made it possible for me to be born, and consequently for them to be born. I think their reaction was very positive because they acquired a greater understanding about where they come from.
What do you think your parents gave you that when you think of your parents now, I know your dad's risk and courage?
What they gave me was a sense of responsibility, work ethics, and a sense of fairness.
What have you learned about life, Norbert?
Possibly not as much as I should have.
But are any things that you would have done differently about that would be a philosophy that you might pass on to your children?
Well, in my business life, no. I think that I did what I thought was the right thing to do. In my personal life, maybe I could have done better. But again, that goes under the heading that nobody's perfect, and we all make our mistakes along the way.
What are you most proud of when you look at these 4 children?
I'm proud of the fact that they are making good use of all the efforts that their father and their mother put forth in order to give them the best possible education, which is of fundamental importance for their future.
You know, if they were describing any one of your children, if they were describing you to one of their friends, and they would say, my dad is what?
Probably too old-fashioned.
What do you do with your kids that are fun? What would they say is fun about you?
Probably not as much as they'd like to see, because I work as hard as I do, and I do my best to spend time with them and take them different places. And I come from the old school as far as discipline, good manners, the ability to develop good relationships with others. But all in all, I think that they still love me in spite of my responsibilities as a parent.
Is there anything that you would want your children to know that maybe we haven't talked about?
Well, above all, I think that what I would want them to know is that I love them very deeply. And although at times circumstances cause me to be like a cop on the beat, and being the disciplinarian that I believe that I have to be as a responsible parent, that I, above all, love them very dearly. And that is the thing that I really like him to understand after it's all said and done.
Intellectually, we all understand mortality, but emotionally, have you been able to deal with that, or how have you been able to?
I'm a born optimist. If I weren't, I would not have been able to do a lot of the things that I have done. But on the other hand, I'm also rather pragmatic and a realist. So there are two sides to my makeup. One is this born optimism, and on the one hand, and then on the other hand, my ability to also be realistic. So facing the current situation regarding my health, the same two concepts apply. On the one hand, I'm optimistic about the outcome. I feel that I'm physically and mentally geared up to deal with it. On the other hand, on a realistic level, I have to consider the possibility that things may not go right. And for that reason, I needed to prepare myself and my affairs, organize my affairs in such a manner that everything will be taken care of if worse comes to worse. I have a lot of reasons why I would want to survive this challenge, as I have other challenges, with a special focus on my children because they're so young and still today. My twin boys are 15 years old. My youngest is only 14. My daughter, who's the oldest, still only 23. And I think that it would benefit them if I were able to be around longer until they mature more than they have by virtue of their young age.
I know that you're not one to be boastful about what you've accomplished, but what are you the most proud of?
Well, in terms of my business life, would be the fact that I was able to create these companies from zero, from scratch. That I was able to create employment for hundreds of families, and a sense of security and long-term continuity. And in terms of my personal life, that I was able to have these 4 children, and given the best guidance that I know how to give.
We didn't talk about philanthropy. Is that something important to you?
Yes, it is. It's very important. And I have contributed to many charities over time. But more recently, I decided to create a charitable foundation, which is called the Gehr Family Foundation, with substantial assets going into it, and in hopes that my children will take the lead over time and become very proactive. And the decision-making processes and deciding which causes are worthwhile supporting.
But what is your overall philosophy of life? And you hinted towards it when you said how your children would have tolerance, for others. But your philosophy of life, encompassing all of life.
Well, that's quite a question that you're asking. I would say to be the best human being that you can be in dealing with others, whether it be family or friends or business associates. Just to be the best human being that you can be. I have stopped working for money a long time ago because fortunately I have not needed to make more money, but I always needed the challenge, and I will always continue to need that. For as long as I live, I thrive on taking on challenges. That's what makes me tick. That's what makes me be who I am. On behalf of 450 some employees that make up the companies that we have presently in our group, and to their benefit and their families and my children, those have been my objectives, and I think that I've achieved them. I feel really good about what I've done. No one, no matter how long they live, become all-knowing. There's always more to learn and more to experience. I just think that I did the best that I could with my life.
It's quite an amazing tribute. Is that sound? That's the third time that I watched that, and it gets better each time. When you see a man being able to sum up succinctly the most important values in his life, that to be the best human being you can be, it's tremendous value. When I was studying to become a rabbi, the way we were told was, God will never ask you, why weren't you as great as Moses? God will never ask you, why weren't you as great as this person or that person? But he will ask you, were you the best you that you could be? And that's what Norbert will say, yes, I was. And he can be proud of that. I was impressed that when he was asked about the legacy for his children, he gave an answer that is brilliant. You know, when you listen to some parents, they say, what do you want for your kids? You know what usually you hear? You hear, I want my kids to be happy. That's what you hear. And it makes no sense to say that. Because what you're supposed to say is, I want my kids to have an education. Like Norbert said, I want my kids to be good, decent human beings. I want my kids to be the best that they can be, and these things will bring them happiness. Happiness comes as a result of how you live, the kind of person you are. And that's his legacy to his children, to his family, the people he loves the most. And so we know that our sages have told us it's not the place that honors the man. It's the man who brings honor to every place where he goes. That's Norbert's life. There was a great sage who lived in the 2nd century. His name was Akavya, the son of Mehalalel. And he gave us an idea of life. He said, Tistakel bishlosha dvarim. Look at three things and your life will be fine. You must be able to answer for yourself. And I'm going to paraphrase it slightly. Who are you? Where do you come from? And where are you going? And if you can answer these three questions, you will never have to worry lifnei mi ata atid litain din vecheshbon, before whom at some point later you will have to give an account of this life. The first question is personal. Every person has to answer it for himself, and you saw in the video how Norbert answered it. Who are you? He had a sense of self. He knew who he was. A powerful sense, an identity of who am I? And once you understand and answer that question for yourself, it humbles you. It elevates you. It allows you to achieve remarkable things. But it's not enough to be an island unto yourself. And so the second question is, where do you come from? What are your roots? And he was able to answer that in the video. He talked about how fortunate he was that he was born, that he came from a world that self-destructed, the ugliness of a Europe that was ablaze as an inferno of hatred. And that never leaves you. Because he said one of the most moving moments is when he and his family visited Yad Vashem, the memorial to those 6 million who were killed. It touches you. I've been there. You can't come out of there the same as you went in. So he had a sense of his roots. And I think that made him a little bit who he was, knowing that he came from those very humble origins, just scraping together a few $100s so he could do something, $800 so he could come to America. A car whistling from New York to California that they have to stop and put water into. That is what molded the man. You don't forget that. And because of he knew who he was, and he knew where he came from. And by the way, as much as who you are is a personal question, where you come from really is a national question. You come from a great people. You're part of something really tremendous. You can be proud of your heritage. And then you can look forward and try and figure out where you're going. And where you're going is not national anymore, but it's now an international question. It's for all people. To be able to say that because of my experience and my family's experience, all people are great. We don't discriminate among people. We realize all are children of God. That's his life. That's what he could be most proud of. That he was able to answer these questions and build an empire that goes on way beyond his life. And people who build, that's what makes them really happy. That something that they gave their life's energy to continues on. It doesn't stop with them. So I wanted to read to you a little poem I wrote about my dad when my dad died, about 14 years ago. I'm reading it to you because I think it was a wonderful tribute to Norbert's life. Just to explain it to you very, very briefly, my dad spoke Yiddish to everybody. I don't know why. When we came to America, I was 8 years old, and my father pulled me aside and he said, "Mit mir wirst du reden nur Yiddish. With me, you'll speak only Yiddish because I want you to know this great language. With Mom, you'll speak our native language, which was Hungarian. And English, you learn by yourself." And that's what happened. I remember coming home on Saturday afternoon from the synagogue. We always walked home, 2 miles. And everybody coming in our direction, my dad spoke to everybody. Shalom Aleichem, wo steht wie geht es, wie ma. And one day I couldn't take it anymore. And I said, Tate, why are you speaking Yiddish to all these people? They don't understand what you're saying to them. They're not even Jewish people you're talking to. And I never forgot his answer. He said, don't worry. Everybody understands kindness. The international language. Can you imagine how great Norbert feels? You saw in the video, you know what he was so proud of is that he was able to hire so many people and help their families. It is important to him. It made him feel good. He talks more about that than about his own accomplishments. And so when my dad died, I wrote a poem about people like that, and it's called The Ladder. If you know the Bible, you remember in the book of Genesis, our father Jacob was running away from home because he had a small family problem. His brother wanted to kill him. So he ran away, and his first night away from home, he had this amazing dream. I think the greatest dream in the whole Bible. He dreams of a ladder that stretches from the earth into the heavens. Angels are going up and down the ladder, and God is at the top, and God speaks to him in his dream, reassures him. And the next day when Jacob wakes up, he is not afraid anymore. His whole life has changed. This is the ladder, and this is for Norbert. I saw a ladder that led to God, and it was very tall. I wanted to climb to glimpse his face, but thought that I might fall. Then I saw an angel coming down the ladder with a smile so sincere. "Come, take my hand," he said. "We'll climb together. There's nothing to fear." God is waiting. He longs for you. He wants you to climb up high. But if you want to be near to him, your head must touch the sky. Your heart must touch the universe and feel primordial pain. Then you will come to understand that your life was not in vain. Your soul must touch the infinite to grasp eternal truth. Then you will love the Lord your God as in days of blissful youth. I took the angel's hand, and together we climbed one rung. Then the angel put a drop of nectar gently on my tongue. I tasted the sweetness of belonging. I shed a grateful tear. The angel stirred and raised his wings. I sensed that God was near. We climbed much higher and higher still. My feet just wouldn't stop. And pretty soon I noticed that we had reached the top. Then God spoke in dulcet tones with reassuring calm. He held me near his beating heart and sang a mighty song. I am the Lord your God. You are my precious child, beloved in my sight. I'm always watching over you every day and every night. I am with you in all you do forever and a day. I'll always love you and support you in each and every way. Don't be so busy in pursuit of life that you forget to live. Don't be so busy always taking that you forget to give. Wealth is not measured by money. A hero is not measured by strength. A day is not measured by hours. And life is not measured by length. You must learn how to truly listen and teach yourself to see. Then your eyes will be filled with beauty and your ears with melody. There is much of heaven I could show you to give you a little taste. But since you are here right next to me, I'd rather we just embraced. I longed for God, and he brought me near to learn his sacred plan. And in the moment that we touched, I found my fellow man. This is Norbert's life. Here's a man who I don't think consciously he was thinking about it, but through the circumstances of his life, from a very young age, he was already on God's ladder. And he was able, through sheer industriousness, hard work, great seichel, great brains. It's a tremendous combination, hard work and smarts, to be able to climb very high on that ladder to go close to God. And he was blessed that in his life, there were many angels holding his hand, many of them here today. And truly, he is a heroic figure. When you think about how he lived his life, you can't but help but admire it. You know, when you think of somebody who's a heroic figure, when you're a little kid and they ask you who's your hero, we pick usually a sports figure, you know, Kobe Bryant in LA, somebody. Then you get a little older and you think about it more seriously and you realize, you know, those are not my heroes. Those are people I enjoy watching. But really my hero is my dad, my mom, the people who love you, who make a video for you so that you'll never forget how deeply you are loved. That's the hero of your life. These are the people who make the difference for you in your life, whom would even give their life for you if they had to. So truly, that is a heroic man, that in the finest sense of the word. And he was a very wealthy man in the things money can't buy. I'm not talking about money. In my family, when we were growing up, my mom used to say, our family is very rich, we just don't have a lot of money. If you forget about the money that he talked about, he didn't need a lot of money at the end. He had made enough money, but forget about that. I don't think that's how he would measure himself. If you think about how rich was he in loyalty, you hear the premium that he places on it. Loyalty. Being there for somebody in their time of need. You see how important that was. This was a wealthy man in the things money can't buy, the things you have to earn by deeds. And here is somebody who found God by not looking for him, but by living a good life, helping people, doing good things. Yeah, tough things, business things, yes, but building something that is meaningful, valuable, and lasting. I especially, if you'll permit a personal note, I especially love the relationship with the Israel defense industry. That warms my heart the most. To help a little country survive in a sea of enemies. That means a lot to me. And I know it meant a lot to him. And I'm happy that we have his brothers here today from Brazil who oversee that tremendous act of kindness to a little country. And that's why I think, as Norbert goes home, for all these reasons, that God found him. And I think there's a place of honor for him at God's table waiting for him for a long, long time. And he will be there with his parents, with his family that preceded him, in a place of honor that lasts forever. We escort him on his journey home with spiritual food. We call them prayers. When I say to people, do you know the one that goes, "The Lord is my shepherd"? Everybody nods, not just Jewish people. Everybody knows this prayer. It's one of the most famous prayers in the whole world. It was written by King David, who wrote 150 Psalms that we still have to this day. I wanted to spend just a couple of minutes with you explaining to you why you know it, why this is a great psalm. I once wrote 20 pages explaining this psalm, but I'm only going to give you a little hors d'oeuvre, a little taste of it. King David suffered in his lifetime. If you're old enough to remember like 30, 40 years ago when people were depressed, we said they're suffering from melancholia. Remember that word? And nobody here, you don't use that anymore. It was replaced by, well, people are manic depressive. And now that's gone. The new wisdom in the land today is bipolar. Okay, bipolar. So, God forbid, I would never say that about King David. I would be kicked out of the rabbi business. But I think David writes himself about his highs and his devastating lows. So the question is, what made David depressed? Well, first of all, he had 18 wives, and that was very depressing. I don't know why any man needs 18 wives. Some of them hated him. It was unbelievable. Why he would need 18 wives, I don't know. For me personally, I think 4 or 5 would be plenty. He had the greatest sorrow a human being can have. I think nobody will disagree with this one. He had a son named Absalom, who wanted to kill David, his father. It's unbelievable. And he almost did it. He gathers an army, marches into Jerusalem. David barely escapes the back way out. Of course he's depressed. Who wouldn't be? So what could he do? Sigmund Freud wasn't born yet, couldn't go talk to Siggy. No corner pharmacies get a couple pills. They couldn't do that. So when his spirit was deflated, what could he do? So this is what he did. He wrote a psalm to lift his spirit. And I want to show you how it works. And the reason I'm going to take, in a long service, 5 more minutes to explain this to you is because I hope when you hear this explanation, you will be able to help people who are going through a tough time as David did. The poem begins very nicely, "The Lord is my shepherd," right? What's the job of a shepherd? To take care of the sheep. So what's God doing as my shepherd? What's he doing for me? Well, he makes me lie down in green pastures. So it's very important when you go to sleep, you lay your head down, you can sleep without being worried you'll be attacked while you're asleep. So the shepherd is watching. What if I'm thirsty? He leads me beside still waters. All right, so I give him that much, taking care of me physically. What about my spiritual needs? He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Okay, fine. Up to there, no problem. The 100 times you read this psalm, did you ever notice the next line doesn't belong there? Yea, though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death. Where'd that line come from? If the Lord is your shepherd, how possibly can you wind up in the valley of death? Did the big shepherd make a wrong turn? It's impossible. So what is David trying to say? It's very important. What King David wants to say to you, reaching across the millennia, for thousands of years, what he's saying to all people of all faiths and all races, just children of God, what he's saying to you is, it doesn't matter who you are, how great you are, how deeply you love God. At some point in your life, you will come to the equivalent of the valley of the shadow of death. You're going to find yourself in a very bad place. And quite often, through no fault of your own, you're not a bad person, God doesn't hate you. Life challenges us. We're tested all the time. And so all you have to do is pass the test. You don't have to get even an A, get a C minus, and move on. So now you're in the valley of the shadow of death. What do you want to know? So people say, well, I'm going to go lay on a couch, and for the next 2 years, I want to figure out how did I get here. And if you want to do that, I have no problem with that. These guys studied a long time. They need to make a living. No problem. But David doesn't want you to do that. King David says, it doesn't matter how you got here. You're here. The only thing that matters is how do you get out of here? Forward, not backward. And that's what drove Norbert. He was always saying, what's next? How do we go forward? So King David, in 2 lines, gives you the formula, the secret of life. In this terrible place, the first thing you have to say is, I shall fear no evil. Don't be afraid of what lies ahead. So I say to King David, hey, of course I'm afraid. You see where I am? I'm in the valley of death. Why shouldn't I be afraid? And he tells you, because you are with me. People who go through terrible things feel abandoned by God. They feel paralyzed by fear. So King David is saying, don't be afraid. Don't let life scare you. That could be his motto, by the way. Look where he came from. He could have been scared. He could have shrunk from life and saying, I lost family in the Holocaust. My family's poor. I have no money. I have no prospects, nothing to look forward. And he could have been forgiven for saying that. But that's not him. He's looking forward. Where do we go from here? What's the next mountain to climb? And that's what King David is urging us to do. God, you are with me. And not only is God with you in these difficult times, but now he's closer to you than ever before. How do we know? In the Hebrew, it works beautifully. The poem begins, the Lord is my shepherd, right? He makes me lie down. He, third person. He restores my faith. He leads me beside the still water. But when I'm in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil. Does it say because he is with me? No. It's because you are with me. The tense changes. Ki ata imadi. You are with me. First person, from third to first. So you have to be able, when you're going through a tough time, to realize not only has God not abandoned you, he's carrying you. He's closer to you now. And then when you understand it, believe it, you can go to the next line. Your rod and your staff, if you didn't know how David wrote it, how would you finish that line? Your rod and your staff, they hit me, frighten me, scare me. Who says your stick comforts me? Who would say that? Sheep say that. Because when the shepherd is holding his staff, he's not hitting sheep. He's guiding them to safety, and he's warding off the wolves and other predators who want to harm the sheep. So we have to train ourselves that, metaphorically speaking, when we think we see the staff of God, we shouldn't say, don't hit us, because he's your shepherd. He's guiding you to where you're supposed to be. He's protecting you. And that changes your life. And after those 2 lines, if you can live it and assimilate it, everything flows after that. Look at how the poem flows after that. You make a table before me. You anoint my head. My cup overflows. Goodness and mercy follow me. See that? Everything flows after that. So please join me. Not my favorite translation, but please join me. It's one of the most beautiful prayers ever written. On page 14. Adonai is my shepherd. I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And I think, when you watch this video and you would say to Norbert, all things considered, what do you think of your life? How was it? He probably would use different words, but he would say the equivalent of goodness and mercy followed me all the days of my life. And we have gathered here in huge numbers to be able to say to Norbert as we escort his soul home, may you be now privileged to dwell in the house of the Lord in a place of honor that you so richly earned for yourself, and may it last forever. Would you kindly rise for the memorial prayer? Page 18. El mole rachamim shochein bamroimim hamitzei menuchanechayna tachas kanfei hashchina b'malos kedoshim utehorim kizoar orokiya masirim es nishmas Norbert ben Aryeh, shehalach le'olamo, bahavu, shemishpachto v'chavrei mispalim, v'nodin l'tzdaka bad haskarat nishmato, v'gan eden tehei menuchato, lachein balo rachamim, yastidehu b'sesek kenafav le'olamim, v'yitzor b'tzrachayim es nishmaso, adeinayu nachalaso, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'noimar, amen. And so the very important people, the people that he loves the most. I wanted to say to Crystal and to Max and Robert and Andrew and to their mother Jane, to his brothers, to Leo and Renata, to Richard and Celia, and to all the people that he's so close to, his friends, his employees, the workers, the people that not only are loyal to him, but that he was loyal to them. These are the words I'm going to be reading to you to escort his great soul on its journey home. O God, full of compassion, thou who dwellest on high, grant perfect rest beneath the sheltering wings of your presence. Among the holy and pure who shine as the brightness of the firmament, unto the soul of Norbert Gehr, the son of Leo, who has gone to his eternal home, in whose memory his beloved family and dear friends have gathered to remember him with love, and in whose memory charity is being offered, which I'm sure would make him very happy, because when you saw the video, he talked about all the charitable work that he did in his life and that will continue after him. It's an amazing legacy. So for all those things that he did, and for the many good deeds that he performed that are too many to count, we all pray, dear God, may his repose be in paradise. May the Lord of mercy bring him under the cover of his wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May the Lord be his possession, and may his repose be forever peaceful. And let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Thank you, Rabbi. Ladies and gentlemen, this does conclude the chapel portion of our services for today. In a few minutes, we will be leaving for the internment site. You may return to your cars to follow us in procession to the site, or if you'd like, you may walk behind the family's car, behind the funeral coach to the site itself. I must let you know, though, that the walk is probably at least 450 yards, and most of it is up a slight slope, so it is uphill. Following today's interment services, the family has extended an invitation to have you join them in a memorial gathering back at the Gehr residence on Alpine Drive. For those of you who may need directions, they're outside on the podium to the left-hand side as you exit the sanctuary. The following gentlemen have the great honor of being casket bearers for today's service. When I call your name, if you could please join me in the front of the sanctuary. Richard Gehr, Leo Gehr, Carl Rosenthal, Galen Ho, David Lifshitz, and Mark Goldman. And in great honor of Norbert, at this time I will ask you to all please rise.
I feel really good about what I've done. No one, no matter how long they live, become all-knowing. There's always more to learn and more to experience. I just think that I did the best that I could with my life.